who have reached completely different conclusions. And when you look at the Supreme Court and you see how many decisions come down 5-4, okay, you realize that you can be making all the arguments in the world and still wind up with a split decision, okay?
Particularly on this one, because one of the Supreme Court justices recused herself because she was on the committee. So that makes 8.
I haven't heard her recuse herself at all, Kagan. She has not recused herself. There's a lot of pressure on her to do it, but she hasn't done it.
I heard she did.
I know, I did not. On the contrary, I heard that she isn't going to. See, they're arguing that Clarence, who I think his wife had something to do with something, they're suggesting that he should recuse himself, and he said no. And they're suggesting that Kagan, who has a very, very, very strong reason to recuse herself, she was behind it all, that she should recuse herself, and she said no. Okay. And as a result, I don't know, and the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice said, it's not something for the court to decide. Every individual has to decide for himself.
I see that.
So the odds are that everybody will sit on it. Kagan will not go. Clarence will not go, and the result is likely to be 5-4 to repeal it.
Well, you think it will be repealed?
I think it will be repealed because the conservative majority, you see, Kennedy sits in the middle, and he's more conservative than not, although he's a moderate. But I think on this one, the odds are he'll repeal it.
Now, then the other one is the immigration laws.
Yeah, that's another issue that they're going to be discussing. Well, Bobby isn't here.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. Bobby was just, he said, well, call people, For the tape, there we go.
Okay, good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon. My name is Ronald Bibase, and I'm going to be giving you a little talk on a book called Relationship Power that I wrote. And it's going to hopefully give you insights into relationships that you never had before, and it's going to help you find an easy way to improve all your relationships. So that is the proposal. At the end of the lecture, you will tell me whether in fact you think I have achieved what I'm trying to achieve. Now, we all know the importance of good relationship. Is there anybody here who doesn't? Okay, so the answer is we all know the answers. The next thing that most of us don't know, and even the experts who have long lists apparently have trouble finding, is what does it take to make a good relationship and to create it and to keep it. Now, what I like to do with these little sessions is to ask, okay, individual people if they have any idea. In other words, most of us have, some of us are old enough to have children or close relatives or friends, and if anybody comes and says to you, what do I have to do to have a good relationship? Do you have an answer? Let me show of hands for answers. You have an answer?
Yes.
Okay, what is your answer?
I would say you need open communication.
Open communication.
Trust.
Trust.
That's the two main
Open
points.
communication and trust. Any other ideas?
Acceptance.
Acceptance. Any other ideas?
Forgiveness?
Forgiveness. What?
Magic.
Magic. Okay, it's a little hard to kind of
You
focus.
can't define that, but you have to have the magic of attraction. You don't have to work at the relationship too much, except that what she says is right.
Okay, and
It's easy.
any other suggestions, Janet? Okay, so now we're going to, you see, you've come up with a few situations, a few sort of examples. I have here two books. One is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and the other one is The 7 Principles for Marriage, for Making Marriage Work. And these guys, Gottman and Gray, are both doctors, PhDs, experts in the field. And if you listen to them combined, they have 125 things that you're supposed to do or not do, okay? You have to be kind, you have to be considerate, you have to be supportive, you have to be honest, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be trusting. They make you a long, long list. And then you have to not blame and not criticize and not. And this, you have to be a memory expert to remember them all in the first place. But now I'm going to give you the simple test, which is the reason I wrote the book. Okay? And the test is this. I want each of you, in your own minds, to make a list of the 3 people who make you about yourself. Okay? And signal when you have done that. The best about yourself. Tell me when you have done it. Raise your hand when you have made the list of the 3 people who make you feel the best about yourself. You've raised it too. Michelle, have you done it yet? Okay, have you?
Yeah, I probably got 2. The third one I'm working on.
Okay, and young lady in the back, have you got the list of the 3?
I've got 2.
2 is good enough. So now I want you to make another list. And the second list is the list of the 3 people with whom you have the best relationships. Okay. And it shouldn't be too hard.
Oh, because it would be 3 people.
Well, 2 or 3, if you only have 2 who make you feel the best about yourself, you can settle for 2. The question is, have you made the list of the 3 people with whom you have the best relationships now? Okay, now, the question is, are the lists identical or near identical? Identical, near identical. Now, what have you just learned that is the big, most important thing on relationships?
What was the second question?
The first question was, which are the people who make you feel the best about yourself? And the second question was, who are the people with whom you have the best relationships? And you have just found out that the 2 are virtually always the same. So now you have found out the most important single key to good relationships. And that important key is, if you want a good relationship, you have to make the other person feel good about him or herself. So all this other stuff, okay, if it works at all, it works because within, if you will, a ton of ore, there is an ounce of gold, which is this concept. This concept of making the other person feel good about themselves is the little bit of gold, okay, that will give you the good relationship. And if that gold is knocked out because you also have the negatives, if you nag or you blame or you criticize, everything goes out the window. But if you remember to make the other person feel good about themselves, you automatically are not going to blame or criticize or nag, etc. Now, one of the interesting things, you came up with one answer, which the psychologists believe in. And their answer is, they tell you, honest communication is important. You all think honest communication? So definitely important. So I said, okay. I go home and I tell my wife, when I met you, I thought you were pretty and petite and charming. Now I see you became fat and ugly. You can't cook. You nag and you spend all my money. And the psychologist tells me this honest communication is going to help us. It isn't going to help. Okay? And when I tell the psychologist this, well, their answer is, well, that's not what we mean. And my answer is, that is exactly what you said, honest communication. Okay? And if I go home and I honestly communicate with my spouse or my partner in this concept, I'm going to have a lot of trouble. Okay?
You're right.
Absolutely, okay. So you see, and this is the interesting thing is the most common single answer that I get is honest communication. Okay? And that, unfortunately, unless you modify it to, in many respects, it doesn't work. Okay?
So, musical chairs, you sit here. And,
yes, okay.
This is Alex Rodriguez.
Alex.
How are you?
Hi, how are you? You want to sit here?
No, hi.
Okay. So I guess you. Okay, so.
You have to sit here to get back.
Okay. So did you stop and stop?
Keep on going.
Okay.
If the gentleman, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Could you
Yeah,
just,
sorry.
could you just scooch up?
Yeah, sorry, you got here a little late. Okay.
Yeah. Just scooch up a little bit.
So you're standing. You want to move? What about move a little bit because you're in front of the.
Bob, I'd like to have you in the frame. Can't you
If
move
you want
up?
to sit over there, it's fine. I can sit here.
Sure. Yeah. Let me sit back here.
Can we
All right.
leave it stand for-
Okay, that's good. That's a good shot.
Okay. Now, there there's also a lot of scientific support for what I just said, because there is something that the scientists, there's a principle the scientists refer to as Occam's razor. Right? It's a principle which very simply says that when you have more than one explanation for any kind of scientific phenomenon, the simplest is almost always the right one. And this is the simplest explanation to good relationships there is. Okay? So now, once we go, now we've understood it, and I want to make one other thing very clear. Making a person feel good about themselves is different from making a person just feel good. Okay? I want you to think about that, because in my past discussions with people, they have very often this statement they do. You can make a person feel good by giving that person food, drink, sex, money, drugs, all kinds of things that may make them feel good temporarily, but it doesn't make them feel good about themselves. Okay? And in fact, if you look at the 7 cardinal sins that the Catholics line up with, most of those are lust and gluttony and envy, and all those things are ways in which the individual tries to feel good as a substitute for feeling good about themselves. You follow? And that seems to be the most important single distinction that you need to remember. Just making a person feel good by giving them food or by giving them drink or money or whatever, that is not the answer to the good relationship. The good relationship is by making them feel good about themselves. Now, once we get past the idea of, okay, let's say that I buy this, I want to make another person feel good about themselves, the question is, how do I do it? Okay? And, you know, when I've asked people how you do it, you know, it's interesting. You wouldn't think that it's such a big question, but apparently it is. So I'm going to ask some of you, how would you make another person feel good about themselves?
Positive encouragement.
Positive encouragements. Okay, that's good. How often?
Every day to build their self-esteem.
That's extremely important. You have a very good insight. It's not just positive encouragement, which is good. It is a continual acknowledgement of all the good things that person does. Okay? So, for example, if you're married and you come home and your wife has, the house is clean and the cooking is there and the kids are taken care of, you always thank her for it. Okay? You don't take it for granted. See? You thank her for it. The wife needs to thank the husband if he's a good husband and he's a provider and he isn't out there drinking and carousing and cheating and so on. She also needs to bring to his attention that he's appreciated. The business with the husband and wife relationships is the hardest in all society. And that, originally when I wrote the book, that's what I was addressing. And I was addressing it because the problem with a husband and a wife is you have to get along in so many areas, okay, that inevitably there are going to be conflicts. See? You have to get along socially, you have to get along economically, you have to get along sexually, you have to get along religious-wise, you have to get along with how the children grow, you have to get along with the same friends. It is so difficult, okay, that even in the entertainment, one person likes to go to the movies, the other doesn't, one likes to watch football, the other doesn't. So the difficulty, and the reason the book was originally written, was to help husbands and wives get together. Since then, of course, it affects everybody in life, in all of your relationships. But that is the first issue. Now the question becomes, okay, you know the importance of making people feel good about themselves, and you know that you do it by acknowledging all those of you who are listening now, but a lot of people have a lot of difficulty doing that. And the question is, why? And I'm going to tell you why. There is, in my opinion, in the mind, and that's what this book's all about, we have two separate personalities. One personality is the Dr. Jekyll, which is the nice person, the loving person, the kind person, and the other one is the Mr. Hyde. And the Mr. Hyde is kind of the evil part of us. Okay? Now, this evil part of us I call the beast. beast within us. And I explained, okay, that the beast within us is blind, deaf, dumb, doesn't worry about consequences, wants what it wants when it wants it. Now, it also wants to feel good about itself. Okay? It wants to feel good about itself. But it is the part that if it doesn't feel good about itself, it settles for feeling good. And this beast within us is capable of taking over what I call the logical me, which is the good part of us, without the logical me even knowing about it. I mean, how many of us have watched on TV the story of the wife who gets beaten repeatedly, and every time she gets beaten, and the cops come, and now the husband is contrite, he's saying, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened, I don't know why it took her, it'll never happen again, and he believes it because it's the logical me talking, you see? It's the Dr. Jekyll within him talking. And 10 minutes later, something triggers him and he beats her up again, okay? And he doesn't know why he did it. And the reason he did it is because the beast within him took over, okay? Now, the next interesting question is, how do you control the beast? Okay? And the issue about how you control the beast goes back to what kind of a beast is in you. Do you have a powerful beast in you, or do you have a weak beast in you? And that is determined by how you perceived the love and affection you got as a child. Now, it is not the real love and affection, because most children are loved by their parents, even the parents beat them and abuse them and so on. But the perception of the child is what counts. Okay? So if the child perceives that it was not loved, this is why I wrote the book, because I was hyperactive as a child, and even though my parents loved me dearly, I felt completely unloved. Then the beast gets power. And the beast is looking for ways to feel good, because it can't feel good about itself. I was a bully when I was younger. Okay? And I used to, in my own mind, I used to put people down all the time. And I remember at the age of 22, I was standing on a street corner, and everybody was walking by, my mind was running. This one is too fat, that one's too small, who the hell does this one think she is? And it was amazing. I was thinking, the logical me said, what are you doing? You've got 1,000 people are walking by, you don't know any of them, you'll never meet any of them, you'll never talk to them, and still this is going through your mind. Why? Okay? Why? Well, I found out why. It took me 50 years, but I found out why. And the why is, it was the beast within me who had so suffered because I had been hyperactive and my parents had done things to me, they meant well, but it didn't work, that my beast was looking for some way to feel good by putting people down even in my own mind. Okay? I was mature enough now to be able to externalize it, but it was going on in my mind. And I was saying, why the hell are you doing this? Okay? I mean, you're just standing waiting for somebody to, what are you doing? And I couldn't stop it. Okay? And that's what I mean when I talk about it. So, you have to be able to control that beast. Now, one of the things I'm getting into is the bullying aspect. You know, bullying is a relationship issue. Okay? People bully because the relationship they have is bad with the person they're bullying, but they get a certain degree of, shall we say, satisfaction from bullying, or they wouldn't bully. Now, why do they do it? They do it because the beast within them gets its satisfaction from hurting others. It's like, okay, I'm suffering, I'm going to make someone else suffer, and I'm going to feel good about it. And that's what the beast does. And then the answer is, how do you control the beast? Okay? And it's very interesting, because I learned how to do it. You control the beast two ways. The first way is by recognizing what you've just heard. Okay? It gives you a lot of insight, and it's almost like you're observing yourself, and you're able to understand what's happening. That usually will go a long way towards stopping it. The other thing that's very interesting is this. Everybody likes to think they're very smart. Now, one of the smartest things that you can have and you can be, and I think, I'm Jewish, it happens to be in the Torah, although I haven't read it. I think it's also in other religious centers. you can tell me if I'm right, and the idea is control yourself, okay? Before you look to control anyone else, learn to control yourself. And that is the greatest power, not power over others. Am I right, Bobby?
Right.
To control yourself. Now, when you have learned that the beast is able to control your logical me, okay, that understanding, okay, makes you a pretty smart individual, because very, very few people understand that. And being a smart individual makes you feel pretty good about yourself. And that is enough, often, to calm the beast. Because what the beast wants is either to feel good through antisocial activities, or to feel good about itself, like the logical me, through positive activities. Okay? And when it can't get, the beast is powerful because it hasn't had that, has not perceived the love and affection in youth, when the beast has that within it, okay, it is going to be doing antisocial things, which is bullying and stealing and doing all kinds of bad stuff, okay, to get that feel-good, temporary feel-good feeling that it craves because it can't feel good about itself. And that is basically the key to really the entire story. Now, once you understand it, the next thing is you need to internalize it. Okay? Internalizing it means that you're going to sit here and you're going to listen to me, and you're going to walk out and you will presumably have learned something from it, but it's a passing thing. To internalize it, you have to either read it and reread it or think about it and keep implementing it until it becomes second nature. All of you drive. When you started driving, you know how it was. You get in the car, you sit, you put the key in, you turn it on, you look here, you look there, you watch, you do. The first few months, maybe the first few weeks, that's what you're doing. Don't talk to me, I'm driving, okay? Then it becomes second nature. You drive, you talk, you sing, you text, you shouldn't do it, but you do. And that's how it works. So this internalization is when it becomes second nature. That's when you have achieved it. That's when it's become a part of you. That's when you, okay, do the things that makes the other person feel good, avoid the nagging and the rest of it. So that is the entire process. That is the story of the book. What I'm also now trying to do is I'm trying to get it into the schools, because the schools try to stop the bullying by punishing the bullier, making him conscious of his bullying. But none of them get to the beast. Until you get to the beast and make the beast, give the beast what the beast needs, okay, in a good way, okay, you are not going to stop the bullying. And long-term effects of bullying apparently continue, and there isn't, the effect of bullying is not corrected by the short-term works. And that's what I'm now working with the school board to try and get this into the schools. Because I believe that it's almost like you have a car that's racing, you have your foot on the accelerator, and what they're trying to do is to put their foot on the brake. So the accelerator is going, the brake is going, the car is in turmoil, and it's not going to work. My system removes the foot from the accelerator. You now get the peace. The beast within you is satisfied. And once that happens, you then naturally start doing all the good stuff. And that is the thrust and essence of the book. And now we turn to questions.
So what is the beast inside of that person?
What is the beast? Well, the beast is a part of the brain. See, there are two parts to the brain. Okay. Now I'm giving you this. There's an emotional part of the brain. The guys who study the brain, the scientists, they will tell you that there's one part of the brain that's the emotional part, and there's another part of the brain that's the thinking part, and there's another part of the brain that's just the automatic part that just
Motor skills.
What?
Motor skills.
Yeah, the motor skills, which controls, no, it controls the independent part, the breathing, the lungs, all the stuff that works. Our body,
So what is the difference between your concept and the concept that the school or the psychologists or...
the difference is enormous, and I'll tell you what it is. What the school tries to do is it tries to take the bully, and it tries to, first of all, punish him if he disobeys. It tries to make him conscious of what he's doing. but it does not address the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is the bully is bullying because he can't help it most of the time. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to get the bully to stop bullying because he wants to. The fact of the matter is, the bully isn't happy, except in the short term.
If he wants to, then how is he going to do it?
He's going to do it exactly the same way that I described it. The knowledge that he's controlling himself is going to help. Okay? The fact that that knowledge, it makes him an intelligent person, is going to help. And the third way is to give him the society-approved way of making him feel good about himself. For example, if I were running the school, I would pick the bullies and make them protectors of the victims. You're a bully, you're a big, strong guy, you're a bully. And this is just an example, I don't mean it. And this young lady is being harassed, not necessarily by you. I am a teacher. I can't control what goes on in the playground and elsewhere. I want you to protect her. If she has a problem with anybody in the school, I want her to come to you, and I want you to go up to them and say, listen, you, leave her alone, because if you don't, you're going to have to deal with me. That is going to make the bully feel good about himself in a good way. And that will give him what he needs. And hopefully, we haven't tested this, this is the theory, but hopefully the victim, okay, is going to be able to seek protection. Now, one of the other very important things is you would not believe, or maybe you would, how the victims, okay, feel that somehow they are wrong in some way, that they deserve to be victims, okay, because they have some flaw in there. Maybe they're not good looking, or they're too fat, or they're this, or they're that, or whatever it has to do with, okay, something. And, or if it's an ethnic thing, if they're in the wrong ethnic group, if they're in the minority ethnic group in one area, which it could be a majority elsewhere, that will be a problem. And the point is, they are made to feel by the bully that it's their problem. Yeah. What I am telling you is, it is not their problem. The victim will be taught that the problem is in the heart of the bully. It is the bully who has the beast problem, not the victim. Okay? Because some of the victims actually believe that they are, inferior people. I'm not so smart, I can't play football, I'm this, I'm that, I'm too fat, I'm too short. So they believe that. When they understand that the problem has nothing to do with them, it is the problem in the mind of the bully. That's going to make them feel much better about themselves. Is you walk around feeling bad about yourself. Okay? I was bullied and I was a bully. Okay? And I know both sides of the equation. Okay? So I know exactly how one felt. And you wind up feeling there's something wrong with me. Okay? Because I'm being bullied, I'm being told I'm this, I'm that, and it's true. I'm not very good at that, I'm not good at something else. And the point is, my system should help the victim, okay, stand up and say, it's your problem. This is how you feel about me. It's not me, it's you. Okay? This is where the problem lies. Once they have that, they will get the self-esteem and the self-confidence, because that's the reality. The other isn't.
How much of the bullying do you think is learned in the home?
I think that the bullying is not learned in the home. I think that the groundwork for creating the bully is directly a function of the perception of the bully's degree of love and affection received. Now, I use the word perception, okay, because now I'm talking about bullying. I used to use the word, I didn't use the word perception.
Is that parental love you're talking?
The immediate family, parental, mother, father, sister, brother, everybody around it. You see, I've grown so good at this, I can talk to somebody in 5 minutes, and at the end of 5 minutes, I know whether they received the kind of love. You look to me like you received a lot of love and affection as a child. Am I right?
Yes.
You see? I can tell. I can tell from the reactions, okay? And I remember that it took me a long time to find. I used to have a discussion with a friend of mine who was brilliant. And I would talk to him, and I'd like to get into arguments with him. And I would say, this is the way it is. He would say, no. I'd say, no, you're wrong. All right. It would annoy me. And at the age of 72, I called him up. I said, you didn't give a damn what I thought, did you? He said, no. I said, you grew up with a great deal of love and affection from your family. He said, yes. I said, that's why. You see, you have such a sense of self-worth. Who cares what you have to say? I feel good about myself. Say what you want. See? So the problem is, if you like that, eh?
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. So the problem is, if you grew up with a perception, not the reality, because I know my parents loved me, but I was hyperactive. And one of the worst things that happened to me was, at the age of 7, my parents put me in a car. I remember it was a 2-door car. I was in the back. I couldn't get out. And they told me, that's it. We had it with you. We're going to drive you to the desert and let you die. That was it. And they drove me for 20 minutes. I was screaming, blue murder. And finally, at the end of the trip, my mother turns to my father and said, well, maybe we'll give him another chance. So they turned the car around. But that marked me for life. Because I said to myself, my own parents are ready to kill me for nothing? What did I do? See?
Was that a form of bullying?
No,
Right.
well, it wasn't the form of bullying. They were just, no. But what that created in me was this, I had this loss. I didn't feel loved at all. And so the beast within me needed some kind of satisfaction. That made me a bully. Okay? And that is why I kept putting people down. I was very good, as you can tell, with words. And I used to label people. Okay? And I remember one guy, who was a friend of mine, he was tall, skinny, his name was, I named him Scarecrow. He died at the age of 67, they still called him Scarecrow.
Okay.
So I was doing that with kids around me. I'd find a person was this or that, and I was constantly looking for some way to put them down. Okay? So I would feel good, not good about myself, good. It was the kind of the evil good. It was the short-term, antisocial good that I got. Okay, but you see, and when you learn how to do this, you get to stay with people like this lady here. She is a lady. She's a loving, caring lady because she grew up that way. She doesn't need to bother anybody or to put anybody down to feel good about herself. And some of us do. As a matter of fact, if you look closely at probably all the world's dictators, including this Ahmadinejad who stands 3'2", and all these things create problems for them, and that essentially is how they are. So that is basically the essence of the bullying concept. And once you understand that, hopefully, yes, go ahead.
What could the victim do to the person bullying them in defense?
Okay, the victim is not going to be able to physically respond to the bully. What the victim needs to do, and this is what my program will hopefully achieve, the victim needs to understand that it is not the victim who is at fault. It is not the victim who is flawed. It is the bully. So that way, when I went to one of these bullying seminars, and this poor little girl, she was maybe 5'4" or something, and she was crying, and she was a very pretty, slim girl, crying because they bullied her consistently at school. And I tried to make her feel better about herself. But the point is, once the victim understands that this attack has nothing to do with the victim, it has to do with the bully, okay? That's the first thing that's going to make her feel better about herself. So at least, she isn't going to go out in the world with this burden of feeling I'm no good, okay? Because this person says I'm no good. No, it's not you, it's him, okay? He's the one with the problem, okay? Now that goes a long way towards at least addressing the bullying problem. It makes the bully not feel that it has to do with him, and the victim will not feel that it's her fault or that it has to do with her flaw. And that's an enormous progress. Beyond that, the protection of getting the bullies, bully A, who goes to bully, let's say, that bullied victim A, might become the protector of victim B. Because now, if the bully becomes the protector, sort of a policeman, now the bully is going to get to feel good about himself in a way that is socially acceptable, not in the antisocial way. Now, there's one other aspect I'm just going to mention in passing, because it may occur to you. What happens with gangs? They react in different ways. They don't react in the way I describe. And the reason is fundamentally basically exactly the same. The gangs are rejected by society. They have abusive parents or no parents or whatever, and the only family they have is the gang. And so they go to the gang, and then the most important thing to note is they change their system of values. Instead of society's values, they become the gang's values. And the gang's values are completely antisocial. They learn to steal, they learn not to snitch on the gang members, etc. And with the same sense of adherence to the good society rules which we as society people will carry, they will do exactly the same thing in reverse, but for the same reasons. Because to them, being part of this, shall we say, outside society, they go by their rules. And that's why, until you get through to them and to their beast, so that their beast understands what's going on and may hopefully correct it, you're not going to achieve anything, because all you do is you threaten them, but to them, disobeying their own society's values is worse than listening to you. And that's what happens. So the point is, there is a path, hopefully, okay, to get somewhere with these people who are in gangs. And I'm saying, I don't know how well the system will or won't work, but I believe that there is nothing else that is likely to work any better.
Well, how do you see your program competing with the current trend for bullies, which is to give them drugs in school? So somebody's disruptive in class, somebody's bullying, they're put on Ritalin, they're put on Thorazine, and that's all sponsored, those programs, by the drug companies, obviously, because that's how they are feeding our kids tremendous amounts of, antipsychotic drugs, antidepressants.
I try very, very specifically to stay away from pathology. If the children have some kind of pathology, if they are hyperactive or they are in some other way, they suffer from some pathology which requires medical intervention, that's a different story. Now, my system will work for all of them to some degree, but I am not in any way suggesting that anything I have to say should exclude, okay, the pathology issues. My system is one that I developed it in the last few years. I just wrote the book, and I think that it's going to have some tremendous effect. I've seen it have unbelievable effect on a few people around me. Okay, one guy, the son of a very good friend of mine, read the book, and he said to me, I was driving, he said, I stopped, and he said, I burst into tears for 2 hours. And he said, I went back to see my father. I get a little emotional on this. Whom I hadn't gotten along with for 10 years. And I finally understood what happened. And it created a much better relationship with the father. I've seen other people whom I explained this to change completely. Some guy who was abusing who was screaming at his wife regularly. Once he understood why, he stopped. Okay. Overnight, 15 minutes. And I remember at the time I had my girlfriend who passed away. She was a psychologist, and she was helping me make sure that whatever I said, I took into account all knowledge of psychology. And I remember when I said to her, see, it works. Well, it only works because, he knows you very well and he believes you and so on. So I said, this is in his head. Doesn't matter how well he knows you or doesn't know. It's worked. And I've seen it work with other people. And as a matter of fact, what led me to understanding it in one way, which went into the book, I used to be a macho driver. Okay? Macho driver means you don't get in front of me. I'm driving, you get behind me. Okay? And then, at the age of 72, I decided, for some reason, to do random acts of kindness. So now I slow down. Okay, I'm driving, I see anybody needs to get in, I slow down, I help people. And I think to myself, what changed? Okay. And I realized what changed. Before, okay, the aggressive behavior made me feel good Now, the random acts of kindness made me feel good about myself. Okay? So it was completely internal. Nobody else was around. Nobody knew. Nobody saw. But I felt it. And I saw how, when you understand what you're doing, okay, you can turn yourself around and start doing things that are socially very desirable, and you get the same long-term satisfaction.
Well, maybe that's the remedy to road rage.
Well, it's a remedy. It is a remedy. It is a remedy. Again, I don't know how quickly it will work, but I really think, because of the Occam's razor thing, where it's supposedly the simplest solution to any scientific problem is almost certainly the correct one when there are more than one solution. Yes, Michelle?
But if you think your system work, what he asked you just now, as it relates to the pathologist, all these, the side
This has to be in the hands of the pathologist. I cannot take the position. My system will help the worst people to be a little better. But you cannot, I don't want anybody to think, okay, I got a kid who's on Ritalin, get him off Ritalin, let him learn the system. That's not going to work.
But what if you're just dealing with a bully who's brought into the school as a bully, and he's going to have two choices, your program or Ritalin? That's the problem.
Yeah,
Well, then he's going to take his Ritalin and he will go through my program. I actually.
But then why does he need your program if he's
Because the Ritalin isn't going to help him.
Oh, sure. He won't be able to bully you, but he'll go unconscious, basically.
Okay, the Ritalin is the brake on the accelerator.
On the whole person.
No, you see, the accelerator, when you take Ritalin, okay, it will stop you, okay, for as long as you're taking the Ritalin. I took Ritalin when I didn't know that I was hyperactive until I was 50. My daughter was hyperactive, and by the time she was 10 or 12, we had her on Ritalin and all kinds of other stuff. And by the time I was 50, she and my wife at the time said to me, you know what, maybe you're hyperactive. Me? Yeah. I went to see a doctor and I went on Ritalin. And interestingly enough, I was. And the Ritalin helped me concentrate enormously. Okay? Now they've stopped me because I got a little bit of high blood pressure at a later age, and so they said you can't take the Ritalin because of the high blood pressure. But certainly if Ritalin helps, okay, you give him the Ritalin, but that usually is not going to solve the problem. If it does solve the problem, fine. So all the kids who can
It
solve
doesn't, so I agree
Doesn't
with
solve
you.
the problem.
Programs like yours solve the problem.
I am talking,
But you're competing with the drug companies getting into the schools who don't want your program because it offsets the need for drugs.
Well, I don't-
and they're
I
the
don't
ones
think-
funding these kids to be. This new bully legislation sounds all candy coated, kind of like, we're going to solve bullying, a 3,000-year-old problem, like we're going to leave No Child Left Behind, which didn't fail dramatically, even though we were all in support of it. And the problem is that what they're doing is they're recruiting a whole generation of kids that he's a bully, and anybody who's labeled a bully will now be put into Ritalin. And that's what you're competing against. This isn't really about solving kids' problems like your idea, which gets to the core of the human soul
Core
and
problem.
solves that. This is about a drug company coming in and saying, oh no, that thing's dangerous. This guy's book is crazy because if he fixes them, I don't need Ritalin.
Well,
What's
in the first place,
and
in the
who's
first place-
paying these guys?
Okay, in the first place, my problem, I was hyperactive. My problem will not fix the hyperactivity. The Ritalin, what the Ritalin does is it calms the hypothalamus, I think. because-
Okay, but then we'll give you Thorazine, and that calms even big elephants and stuff.
Well,
So
all I
it
can
works.
say, all I can say is,
Let me suggest something. First of all, I apologize for being late, and I really, I think I have a pretty good idea of what you're trying to do, and which is I admire you for it because you're basing your. I haven't read your book obviously, but you're basing it's based on your experiences, and you're right, you're right. You're absolutely right about what you're talking about because you're really getting back into the behavior of the human brain.
Exactly.
The behavior. It has nothing to do with drugs or anything.
Oh, I agree. I think
It has
this
to-
program's great. I think
It's
this is
what
what
controls.
kids
Yeah,
need.
the
And
whole
I
idea
think
is-
this is where the answer is.
Oh, so do I. I think
Analyze
he's competing with
Your background,
a drug
where you
company
coming
problem that's trying to block his program. I agree with you 100%.
Well,
because
for the
I-
moment-
Would you call that
goes
corporate
to the heart
pulling?
of a kid who's having trouble.
Would you call that corporate pulling?
Yes,
No,
yes, absolutely, that's how it
Let me
works.
tell you furthermore.
Exactly right.
You know, if you include the placebo effect in this whole area, his
Theory.
theory, it will work.
I agree. I'm not saying his theory is wrong. I'm saying he's right. I'm asking him, how are you going to compete with the other theory, which is stick pills in their mouths?
Exactly
And that
like-
makes a
like
lot
what
of
he's
money,
doing.
and they're funding the school.
Exactly
would
what
have a
he's doing.
pilot
Let me
program.
answer that question.
Yeah.
The drug companies, okay, have been pushing their stuff for the longest time, and there's no question, a lot of it is good. The fact of the matter is that the bullying situation it started, the awareness of bullying began in Norway, and there's a guy called Olvius who started the program, and in '82 the program began in the schools and so on. So the competition between the general bullying programs that generally don't work and the drug companies has been going on indefinitely. So that's not an issue. To me, what's going to happen once I get the opportunity, okay, to put the program into effect, then there's going to be results. We're going to see, does it work or does it not work? If it works, then we're going to wind up with a situation where I believe, because I've seen it happen, and it sounds crazy, I think it has the effect of working almost instantaneously. It's unbelievable that the person I was telling you about who was screaming is my son-in-law who screamed at my daughter. And he never even realized it. We were sitting down one evening, and I said, my daughter is hyperactive and disabled, and so is he. They get along very well. They have a wonderful marriage. And about 6 years ago, I said, Claudia, how's the marriage going? And she says, I love the Bubsy, but he screams at me a lot. And I said, she calls him Bubsy. So I said, Bubsy, why do you scream? I don't scream at her. She says, yes, honey, you do. So I explained to him, he had been brought, he's learning disabled, visibly so. He had been abused as a kid. He had grown up, and as time went on, a lot of things happened that were positive in his life. He married my daughter, who was a beautiful girl. He started doing well, and he also had an accident that he recovered from completely, but he got a good settlement. So now he had money. So I said, you became a big shot. Big shot can scream at his wife. Okay? And I said, that's why you're screaming at her. He said, really? And then I asked later, what happened? He stopped screaming. 10 minutes, he stopped screaming. Now he only, not completely, whenever he's under pressure he works at the library actually, whenever he gets under pressure, if he had a very bad day, okay, then he'll scream a little. But the idea of having to scream to feel good about himself, that is gone, okay, most of it. You've been trying to ask a question for a while, ma'am?
Yes. You was talking about bullying. As a parent, how your program you gonna use it to help your kids who's bullying in school or on the street or on the internet? As a parent, how you gonna use your program to help?
Okay. The first thing that the parent needs to do is to make the child feel very good about himself, because the child needs to feel loved, okay? Regardless of, in a sense, actual achievement, okay? Because sometimes a lot of people believe, and I don't agree with this, a lot of people believe that if my son is an A student and he's doing a B+, I got to push him till he does an A. And when he does an A, I want to know why he isn't in the honors, etc. And they make the child feel bad about himself no matter how much he does, okay? And that's very bad. So you have to, in my opinion, what you have to do, you have to praise them for what they've done, even if you say, look, we know you can do better, but you praise them for what they've done. And if they have not done well, but they've tried, okay, then you praise them for the effort. They've got to feel the love and affection in the home, okay, to have the sense of self-esteem that will help them cope with the bullies at school. And the key is, they are convinced, most of them, of the victims, are convinced there's something wrong with them. Okay? They're too short, they're too fat, they're too tall, whatever, okay? And they have to understand it has nothing to do with them. Now, when you say it, okay, without the explanation of this business of the bully, of the beast within you, okay, when you talk to people about the beast within them, it's easy for them to understand it if they start thinking about times when the beast took over. They got very angry and they regretted it later. Most of us, unless I don't know about people like you who have such a terrific, thing, you may never have felt it, but most people will, thank you very much, most people will sooner or later find that they were taken over by their beast. And they'll sit back and they don't understand it. But if you explain it to them, okay, if you explain to the child, this is what is wrong with the bully. Okay? He has grown up without love and affection, without perceived love and affection. I want to make that distinction because I don't want the child to come home and say, that's it, you don't love me, and because you don't love me, this is why I'm that way. Okay? The parent may love you, but you may not see it that way. You may not perceive it that way. Okay? You may be, I was wrong about my parents. I know my parents loved me a lot. But from the time I was 7 years old, I said to myself, subconsciously, I said, my parents are ready to kill me for nothing. Because they were killing me because I was hyperactive. Nobody knew what hyperactivity was at the time. So I was just rambunctious and noisy and to do that to me. So I can't trust anybody. To this day, I basically have a lot of trouble trusting anybody. Yeah.
Two things. One is, if you punish the bully, are you satisfying the beast?
Not at all. All you are doing is putting your foot on the brake. When you punish the bully, you are doing the same thing as jailing the crook. You are discouraging him with punishment. You're not changing his desire to bully. There's a funny story that I loved.
You're feeding more.
In one of these French movies, one of these period pieces, this guy his wife was cheating on him with the best swordsman in France. And he's sitting around talking to his father and a group in a restaurant. And he's getting very excited about wanting to fight this best swordsman in France. And his father said to him, look, you're a cuckold. Get used to the idea. Everybody's a cuckold. He says, really? He said, waiter, does your wife cheat on you? Yeah, of course. Really? And what did you do? I beat the hell out of her. You think it stopped? No, she'll be more careful next time. That's your answer with the bully. Okay?
Now, there's Dear Abby yesterday talked about a teenager who wrote a letter that said that her mother is being very mean to her. Wouldn't let her do this, wouldn't let her do that. They got 4 letters back of teenagers who practically laughed at her by saying, my mother does the same thing. So when you say perceived love, the other teenagers thought that the discipline was love, and this one did not. So when you say perceived, that's a very important element in it.
Yeah, the question, again, there's no question. If you start giving in to everything your children wants, okay, you're setting yourself up for a lot of trouble. They're not going to be disciplined when they grow up on their own lives and so on. So there has to be a balance. But the important thing is they have to understand, okay, that they are loved, okay, regardless, that the love is unconditional, and that they have to feel that. If they don't, whether or not it's there, it's almost always there. But whether or not it's there, okay, if they don't feel it, they don't perceive it, the beast is going to become strong. And when the beast becomes strong, it's a lifelong problem. And if it's strong enough, then they go into the gangs, and then it's like they switch from going forward to going in reverse. The entire context of the laws that govern their thinking, okay, changes. Now, the cop is the enemy, okay, the little old lady is the victim that they're going to mug, and even the gang rituals, I mean, from what I understand, just to get into the gang, I think some of them, there was one on TV who was saying, the entrance into the gang is blood. Blood means you have to kill somebody. There are gangs where you can't get in unless you kill somebody. Robbing somebody is like minor. A woman has to be gang raped if she's going to join. It's unbelievable. But that's their standards. They regard as, and when you see them in jail, okay, they still have this very, very strong sense of, these are our values, okay, And these are the people, this is our family, these are the people who support our views, okay? And this is what we're going to stay with. And a few of them, every now and again, you get one or two of them who changes completely. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but his beast has somehow, he overcomes it, and you see he's calmed down, and he's talking to other people, and he's trying to get them to change. But you get one in 10,000 who is like that.
What about the family where the parents aren't as good as you're saying, and they're not full of love, and they're bullies? And they bully their kid, and they want their kids to be bullies, and they're proud of their bullying of other kids. And so it's, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Meaning you can always see a lineage between the bully and his father who's a bully. Bullies
Yes.
aren't, it's not usually a organic thing in your body. It's how your parents are raising you to compete against this kid by any means, to take his candy if you have to. And these parents aren't going to give the love kind of that you're saying is there in all parents. It's not. These bullies come from bullying, mean parents who bully their kids usually.
Well, let's agree on one thing. Most parents love their children. There are going to be some, presumably, who don't love
But
them.
love can manifest in bad ways.
Well, exactly. There's no question.
They're loving them, but they're beating them. And
Okay, there's no question that quite often, and this is the interesting part. Part of the problem with the bully is being bullied at home, and so he gets it from the parents, and you have to bring in the parents, and you have to try and get the parents to understand, and that's why I talk about perception. Okay, the bully does not perceive himself as being loved at home sufficiently, and because of that, he looks for this alternative. The parents may believe they love him and they're doing all they can, but they do have to understand the difference between, and this is another thing I write about in my book, there's something called subjective reality and objective reality, okay? And some people say perception is reality. Does anybody agree that perception is reality?
No.
Oh, well, a lot of people do. But the point is, perception is subjective reality. It isn't reality, but it is subjective reality. And objective reality is something that we can never reach. Okay? And you know, there's a guy called Immanuel Kant, who's a German philosopher.
Well, it's how you receive it. It's how it allows you to make up your mind.
Well, the point is that what you receive is, you don't receive it straight. You receive it through a series of prisms. The prisms are your beliefs, okay, your experience, okay, your own interests. Okay. I remember one time I walked through a room with my wife at the time, and I am a builder among other things, and I was admiring. It was one of the major hotels in Palm Beach, and I walked through it, and I was admiring the beauty of the ceilings, the floors, the this, the that. And I got out to the other side, and my wife says to me, "Did you see the rock?" What rock? Some woman had a jewel, had a ring, apparently. It was like a 4-carat ring. That's what she noticed, okay? I didn't even notice the woman was alive, okay? So the point is, my subjective reality, I looked at the building and I admired. Hers, she was looking at the way women dressed and the jewelry they had on. That's part of the difference.
It's how you perceive it. That's what
Exactly.
Now, my parents, without question, I know they love me very much. They loved me during my childhood. But my problem was I felt they never trusted me. Well, how was it?
Well, if they loved you, I mean, if they loved you and they never trusted you,
Yeah.
and you never gave them a reason to distrust, I mean, if you didn't walk off with
I
a family
did.
jewels or anything, then I don't understand. Then the flaw is with them. Now, you see, I grew up, you know, this may explain it. I grew up not trusting anybody because my feeling was, if my own parents can condemn me to death without reason, okay, and there was no, then I can't trust anybody, okay? And all my life, you know, my wife, my girlfriends, I always had this very, very nervous situation. And every time I read about some woman, you know, ruining her husband in a divorce and so on, I said, I was right to be careful and so on. So the bottom line is that if they didn't trust you, it might be that they had their own issues when they were younger that led them to be distrustful anyway. You see, it's nothing to do with you. That is the essence of all of this, is that quite often...
parents tend to think that, you know, because they knew you as from a baby up, that you're always the little baby. I was the third in the family, so.
Well, what was the lack of trust? Was it, did they think you were going to, was it that you were going to steal something, or they didn't trust you to drive the car
I'll
without
give
an
you an
accident?
example that's really bothered me all these years. I was always great in woodworking shop, okay? And I started a project that was spectacular to create a divider between the kitchen and the dining room and an opening thing so you could pass the dishes through.
A bus.
And I started the project, and one morning, and I was doing a beautiful job. And I woke up one morning, we gave it to the carpenter. Yeah. And this kind of lack of trust has manifested to this day.
Well,
they'll trust a stranger before they trust me.
well, there is something that is called, there's an expression, familiarity breeds contempt. And when you know somebody, and there's another, I think there's another person who said, no man is great to his valet, you know. His valet knows him too well. So if you're a Princeton church and you have a valet, you're not great to him. So it may be that you're the son, so they just don't believe that you know as much as the carpenter, and no matter how good you are. But that's
very disturbing to us.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. But I don't know that can be corrected. But I mean, they loved you, but they just didn't trust you to do the carpentry. But at least they didn't think you were going to steal the furniture.
Right. Well, thanks for
It
the
was.
for the
You see, when you
upside.
say a lack of trust, I think you're talking about a lack of ability to do something, as opposed to a lack of trust in your integrity. You know. So that's different.
Well, that's the same thing, actually, to me.
Well, to me, it's a little different. Okay, I may not trust my daughter to, for example, do a beautiful painting, but I can trust her with $1,000 I give her to go and buy something. So I think it's a very big distinction between a lack of, really, it wasn't a lack of trust, it was a lack of belief in your ability, more than a lack of trust. Trust is, to me, suggests integrity.
Well, I think that you have to nurture a child and allow a child to make mistakes.